I'll have the banana and the toilet paper next, please. Thank you. Welcome to Good Game, the show for gamers, by gamers. I'm Bajo.
And I'm Junglist. Badge, what are you doing?
Jung, I'm assembling our zombie survival kit. We've got 4 zombie games to review this episode, and I'm not taking any chances.
Fair enough.
Resident Evil was the first game to coin the phrase survival horror over a decade ago.
Something's coming.
The latest, RE5, sees the infectious virus move to Africa, where it falls into the hands of terrorists. Or so it seems.
And the other great horror franchise also gets a new installment. Silent Hill Homecoming was originally banned in Australia, but it's been resurrected, minus some torturous moments.
Even the family-friendly Wii gets infected with Overkill, House of the Dead, and Dead Rising Chop to Your Drop.
We look at the history of zombie games in backwards compatible, from 1984's Zombie Zombie to the present day.
It's a zombie fest full of gore and not for the faint-hearted. Jung, I'm wearing my scaredy pants.
But first, gamers, can you guess the game for this week?
News time, Jung. You read it, I'll barricade the doors.
Good game.
Japanese developer SNK Playmore have finally revealed the details for the home console version of their latest 2D fighting game, The King of Fighters 12. The series has always been the main competition for Capcom's Street Fighter, and that rivalry looks set to continue when KOF 12 is released in July this year. The new game features graphics that are hand-painted in 2 dimensions, as well as 20 characters, including plenty of classics from previous games in the franchise. The release date for Harmonix's new rhythm game featuring the music of the Beatles has finally been revealed. The Beatles Rock Band will launch worldwide on September the 9th. The game is reported to be able to use any existing Rock Band or Guitar Hero instruments, although developers Harmonix are yet to reveal any other details about the game, including what Beatles tracks will be available.
Good game.
Since its release, the Resident Evil series has given millions of gamers around the world the willies. It's also tried to shock gamers in new ways and evolve with each game, such as true 3D environments and panning camera angles in Code Veronica, light guns in Umbrella Chronicles, and even online co-op in the Outbreak games.
But it wasn't until Resident Evil 4 that the series really grabbed us again, introducing more interesting and rich environments, accessible puzzles, heart-stopping action, and an over-the-shoulder camera view that once again made killing the undead a horrifically enjoyable experience. And Badge, let's forget for a moment that they midi-chlorian the story up a bit with the zombie virus.
Yeah, agreed. Resident Evil 5 builds on everything that worked in RE4 and takes our protagonist Chris Redfield into Africa, where Umbrella bioweapons are being used by terrorists. The story is told well, and mini cutscenes fill in the action gaps, but the main cinematics are possibly the most exciting and just the best edited we've ever seen.
Oh my god.
Some include QuickTime events, which aren't too intrusive, so they actually let you sit back and enjoy the action. In fact, sometimes you just let your character die just so you can watch it again. Jung, there really is an art to getting that right, isn't there?
Absolutely, Badge. Teaming up with Sheva, pretty soon you'll be slicing and dicing your way through a variety of new and familiar enemies. There's your standard groaning zombies, who are sometimes on motorbikes, leaping dogs, blind lickers, giant spiders, and a colossal glut of horrifying bosses. All this diversity just makes up for the fact that you can't actually walk and do anything else at the same time. You can't even break from reloading, which can be a big pain sometimes because some enemies kill you in one hit if they get up close and personal.
It's a Resident Evil staple not to be able to shoot while moving, and the only game that actually changed that was one of the Outbreak ones, and it was also one of the worst. But Jung, after playing so many Gears-like games which have this kind of view, it made me feel like this was a bit... what's the word I'm looking for?
Awkward for no reason?
It's the wonkiest of donkeys, and this kind of forced anxiety by locking the camera view while reloading might be a deal breaker for some newcomers. But, you know, the rest of the game is just so good, pretty soon you forget about all of this, and switching weapons to finish off with a shotgun mid-battle is just awesome.
And it's good to do this too, Badge, because some zombies die quicker to different weapons or ammo. There's a comeback system of sorts where if you die, you're taken straight to the buying screen where you can buy new items or health pickups or sell what you found.
Action is deliciously unpredictable. Often you'll have quiet time for a while, and then a massive boss fight, and then another massive boss fight, and then a whole bunch of cutscenes, and then quiet time again.
Even though most tactics revolve around shoot the weak spot, move back, reload, rinse and repeat, some of the bosses have some pretty fun moments, and it's really when you get overwhelmed in numbers that the game can get quite exciting trying to find new ground.
Yeah, you really need to make use of that 180-degree turn shortcut. Resident Evil has always played around with companions and using other characters to solve puzzles, but never quite got it right. Often you felt like you were just babysitting someone, you know, rather than them actually helping you. Here, the entire game is offline split screen or online co-op, and you can do this with an AI partner as well.
Like most games with co-op, that's where most of the fun lies. However, if you don't have a mate, the AI is almost as good. It'll avoid obstacles, give you ammo if you have that type of weapon, and it's only really at the final boss that it let us down.
But by having a companion the whole way through the game, you don't get that same Tomb Raider feeling of being very alone, which is one of the greatest things about the survival horror genre. And if you're not going to play this with another human person, I think that you'll probably still rather wish you were on your own.
Which is, I guess, why Resident Evil 5 is more focused on the action, and as you can tell, there's plenty of it, including a barrel conveyor belt.
It's such a polished game with some well thought out moments and excellent endgame unlocks. And Jung, the only thing stopping me from giving this full marks is that frozen on the spot thing. I'm giving it 9 out of 10 rubber chickens.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it 8.5.
Good game.
This week's great moment in gaming goes to a favorite scare from Resident Evil 1. Of course, the game was chock full of scares, but the one that holds in our memories as having the most impact goes to zombie dogs. When they first smashed through the glass in that all too familiar corridor, gamers knew that they were in for an unpredictable ride, and consequently were put on edge for the rest of the game. And that's why it's this week's great moment in gaming.
Good game.
If we're doing a zombie special, Badge, I think it's about time we turned back the clock and took a look at the history of zombie games backwards compatible style.
And we're talking proper zombies here, Jung, not those phony head crabby or freaky voodoo ones. And don't try and slip any Spanish-speaking alien insect mind control victims either. I'm onto you.
All right, well, if it's real zombies only, then the first one must be this. It's Zombie Zombie for the Sinclair ZX Spectrum, and it came out way back in 1984. In this isometric action strategy game, you had to fly around in your helicopter rebuilding a city infested by the walking undead. The main idea was to build stairways that you could lure the hungry zombies to climb up and then drop them onto the hard concrete from a great height.
It was pretty complex in concept, and in execution it wasn't much simpler. Which meant that Zombie Zombie didn't really take off. It was, however, the first game to establish the long tradition of games taking inspiration from the movies of legendary master of horror George A. Romero.
The wave of murder which is sweeping the eastern third of the nation is being committed by creatures who feast upon the flesh of their victims.
Romero practically invented the modern zombie genre with his 1968 debut, Night of the Living Dead. This film introduced all the things we associate with zombies today, including their slow, meandering shuffle and their insatiable hunger for human flesh. And as a result, his films have influenced practically every zombie-themed video game ever made.
One game where that influence was particularly obvious was this. It was simply called Zombie, a point-and-click adventure released by Ubisoft in 1990, and its storyline and situation was totally plagiarized from George Romero's second zombie film, 1979's Dawn of the Dead. In the game, you had to lead a team of 4 survivors through a shopping mall that was teeming with the reanimated dead. The game was extremely challenging due to the fact that the zombies would appear without any warning. And if they got enough bites on you, your characters would even turn into zombies themselves.
Another game that could turn you into a zombie just by playing it was this 1994 stinker for the Sega Mega CD.
Balana zombie poopa. Kenwa welcome wagon. Light 'em up.
Released at the peak of the full-motion video craze, Corpse Killer ditched traditional video game graphics in favor of using real actors to fill out its cast of characters. Or at least they claim to be real actors.
Good shooting, brah. Yeah, man. Lots of buzzard meat.
In actual fact, these so-called thespians were so awful, they made zombification seem like an attractive option.
Cool toy. I bet you know how to turn it on. And I bet you know how to do a lot of things.
Well, on that note, I think it's time we got to some good zombie games, don't you, John?
How about Resident Evil?
Oh my god, oh my god! When the first Resident Evil game came out for the PlayStation in 1996, it finally gave zombie fanboys like me something to get excited about. It introduced most of us to the nail-biting terror of the survival horror genre, scared half of us to death with a constant barrage of unexpected zombie attacks, and had us scratching our heads in bewilderment over how we should best organize our suitcases.
Over the years, the series has gone from strength to strength, with the evil bioweapons manufacturer, the Umbrella Corporation, and the members of the Elite Stars team locking in battle in no less than 6 direct sequels and several spin-off games. Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil Code Veronica are generally regarded to be 2 of the best games in the series. While personally, I think Resident Evil 4 is.
Don't even mention it, Junk. They're not real zombies and you know it.
Alright then, if not Resident Evil 4, what's your favorite zombie game?
One of my faves has to be Zombie Ate My Neighbors. I remember playing so much of it on my Sega Mega Drive when it first came out in 1993. It was a horror comedy shoot-'em-up that was based heavily on classic B-grade fright flicks, and I remember having way too much fun with it. I do also have a soft spot for Sega's House of the Dead series though, just because it's so hard not to love any game where you can dual-wield 2 light guns while shooting lots of zombies in their noggins.
Well, lucky for you, there's more of that later in the show. I never liked any of those games, but Capcom's Dead Rising rates pretty highly on my zombie-o-meter. This was another game that took huge, meaty chunks of inspiration from the films of George Romero. It put you in the role of investigative photojournalist Frank West, who becomes stranded in a shopping mall filled with zombies. And they weren't there for the after-Christmas sales either. They were there for your brains. Apart from that, any unconditional zombie love has to go out to Valve Software's Left 4 Dead. The 4-player co-op mode against a never-ending army of brain-thirsty monsters was a total blast.
Here they come!
And the undead versus human competitive mode sealed the deal for me,
Turn around, man!
making this my favorite zombie game of all time. That and Resident Evil 4.
No, don't even mention it, Junk. They're not real zombies and you know it.
They're dead and they're walking, they're zombies.
I'm not listening anymore. Da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da, ba-da-da-da-da-da-da.
Right, you're not gonna... Alright, that's nasty.
Good game!
New high score.
Yes! Finally, all my efforts will be written in the annals of history for all of time. Wait a minute. I will not suffer this indignity! Who did this? Who did this? So help me. When I find the man that left this condemning mark against my name, I will beat him like a Viva Pinata.
Isn't that a kid's game?
Revenge!
New high score.
Yes! Finally, my revenge plot is complete! And my revenge beard!
Hey, doesn't Ignoramus start with an I?
Good game!
When it comes to creating atmosphere, the king of the hill is definitely Silent Hill. Beautifully creepy music, tortured enemies, and off-putting dialogue is always a recipe for goosebumps.
Bad dream?
That's right, Badge. You always feel a bit knocked about after a Silent Hill session, and after some hacking to get it through classification, Silent Hill Homecoming is finally in Australia, minus some camera angles and drills, but still full of crazy, scantily clad nurses, angry skinless dogs, fantastically weird bosses, and a whole lot of fog.
You play as Alex, a military man returning home only to find that his mother has gone a bit weird.
Alex.
And his little brother Josh has gone missing.
Where's Josh?
On top of that, his hometown is markedly run down, and the neighbours have turned demonic. Now, Jung, I don't know about you, but I'd be a little bit more concerned that all this is going on, but Alex seems a little bit nonplussed about it.
Yeah, he doesn't really seem that freaked out at all, does he? The locations are classic horror film, from abandoned hospitals and police stations, sewers to graveyards. And the sound in this game of gates opening or trash cans being knocked down is in such contrast to the silence and hazy visuals that you're definitely going to get a shock now and then.
Like previous games, this one deals with redemption of the town's people, but it's kind of force-fed down your throat, which makes it very different from its predecessors.
Doctor, do you need some help? You're bleeding bad.
Don't you touch me! I bleed out the sin, but it grows back. So I must let it out every day.
In the past, plot lines have been more ambiguous, especially when you enter the hell world, so here it's more rigid, and that takes a bit of the magic out of it.
That's not to say it's really a bad thing. I mean, despite some stilted and dumb dialogue, and consequently voice acting, there are some pretty chilling moments, like the doll boss, for example.
Forgive me.
I hated that boss, Jung. Because of the terrible save point system in this game, when I got to it, I had no health, making her almost impossible to beat.
Yeah, I know what you mean. If you don't keep a reserve of health and ammo, or if you accidentally use it, you're going to hit a very big wall when you come up to big fights or bosses. The checkpoints are okay, but the save points are terrible. So our best advice is to space out your save points well and be prepared for a long session without being able to save.
Controls are usually the main complaint in any Silent Hill game, but they've undergone a much-needed overhaul here, especially in the combat and the camera tracking. You can dodge enemies, which means that fighting actually is more like a boxing match than anything else. And there's also some tricks you can learn, like getting off the ground quicker and luring enemies into a narrow area where they can't swipe at you.
Yeah, it's almost an exploit because they'll just stand there unable to swing at you, but in such a punishing game, you take what you can get. And Silent Hill Homecoming is pure survival horror. There's no health or ammo anywhere, and you really start to love your last 4 shotgun shells.
Graphically, Silent Hill could really do with a facelift, but at least it's not like Origins where you had to keep flipping back into the hell world to solve puzzles, which was interesting at first, but got old fast. You needed a pen and paper just to play that game, Joe.
If you can get over the endless door and map checking and let yourself drift off into the darkness, you'll have a reasonably good time here, but don't expect anything you haven't seen before. I'm giving it 6.5 out of 10 rubber chickens.
I think it's a total step backwards for the series, Jung. I'm giving it 6.
Of course, it's not just the big developers that are infected by the undead badge. I caught up with 2 indie devs from Brisbane, Paul Greasley and Wesley Clark, who have released their own game to help fight the global zombie scourge.
Everybody likes shooting zombies. Zombies are pretty much I think they're like a quintessential bad guy for the modern era.
For those who haven't played the game before, can you describe Zompocalypse?
Zompocalypse is about blasting zombies.
Bust some heads.
Bust some heads.
And stomp babies too, that's a big feature.
Kick.
Well, stomp and kick.
Yeah.
Come on. I've been working as a professional developer for some time, and after the collapse of Oran, where I last worked, we just decided to pick it up and do our own thing.
It's not Gears of War here, but even as a small game, you can look at it and say, yeah, I programmed that, I programmed everything, you know. In Paul's case, he can look at it and he can say, I did all the artwork for it. It's a representation of what we can do by ourselves in a game, and I think that's what really attracts us to it. We had, no illusions of getting rich from it.
You got Chuck McPain, he's the badass redneck, or Corporal Smackdown. He's an ex-wrestler, so I'd probably go the ex-wrestler because wrestlers are badass.
I have to be the redneck because Paul is Smackdown, and he won't have it any other way. So I think he likes the idea of wearing an eye patch. He just hasn't had the balls to do it in real life yet.
What was the process like?
Well, Wesley does mainly the code and technical features and stuff, and he basically just says, you know, we can't do that, and that's basically all he says.
Oh, come on.
No.
You're the most well-treated artist ever. And basically my job is to just program the tools that are needed to make the game and program the logic and AI and that sort of thing and make zombies die, basically.
All right, all this talk of blood is making me thirsty. Let's get into some zompocalypse. All right, which one should I be?
Big Pain, obviously. He's the
Man,
most well-equipped.
Smackdown, don't
He's the
listen to
most
words.
well-equipped. He's the most well-equipped.
Is that an eye patch? I like my depth of vision.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he's got a goatee. Oh, you didn't tell me he had a goatee.
He's got a goatee and eye patch.
You gotta reload.
Oh, kick the baby.
Kick the baby.
Lovely.
Nice.
Grab the power up.
You got hit.
I don't get hit, man. Not even in your game. I am undead.
You'd survive 15 minutes in the zompocalypse.
Oh, come on, man. Good game. High-powered console and PC owners aren't the only ones to get some zombie action, as the infection spreads even to the family-friendly Wii. First up, following the success of Resident Evil on the Wii, Capcom have decided to make Dead Rising Chop Till You Drop.
What? Did you just say zombies? Take a look out there. If those ain't zombies, what would you call them?
It follows the same story as Dead Rising, with some gameplay improvements, such as the save system, which is much better, and they've fixed the distinct lack of boomstick. They've also taken out that stupid photo taking. I know you like the photo taking, but your opinion doesn't count because you're undead. The other Wii offering is House of the Dead Overkill, which comes with these nifty little toy magnums, which you can just wave around to reload. 1 or 2 people can play in story mode, where the movement is on rails, just like the arcade. You've probably guessed by now that despite being on the Wii, neither of these are kids' games. Dead Rising has the option to turn blood green or off altogether, but House of the Dead Overkill is rampant with gore and language. Adults will find Overkill pretty funny, though, as it takes the path of a really tongue-in-cheek Tarantino movie with a ridiculous villain and a narrator that just gets more over the top as you go along.
Tonight, these unlikely allies will confront terror most foul in the blood-soaked halls of Papa's Palace of Pain.
Anyway, back to Dead Rising. The moving and turning can be slower than you'd like, especially since when you get hit by a zombie, you're forced to drop your weapon and freeze in place for 1 second. The mall is a lot more linear now, and we didn't find ourselves swinging the Wiimote much for a harder hit when you can just spam A. Each item lets you do a different finishing move, which is cool, but it doesn't change the extremely repetitive nature of the game. Whereas House of the Dead Overkill keeps things fresh with plenty of crazy scripted events. You might think the Wii is the perfect platform for a point-and-shoot game, but there's always been a bit of lag on screen due to it using infrared. Add to that, you can't actually use the sights on the gun because you're aiming at the sensor bar. This means your eyes are following the crosshair and not the other way around, making it harder to make flick shots. You don't get this problem in Dead Rising, though, as you'll never have enough ammo to use your weapons, so it's mostly melee. The real fun in Dead Rising comes from using random items around the mall as weapons. These range from silly stuff like CDs and toys, to using skateboards and bikes to get around, to more serious stuff like the chainsaw, the lawnmower, and... yeah, I know, that's an umbrella. That's not really serious. But look, the main thing is for a few sacrifices, they were able to fit up to 100 zombies on screen at once, which is pretty impressive for the Wii. Still, it pales in comparison to the 800 or so on the 360, and you do notice the difference. Often you'll just be whacking away at a couple of zombies on the Wii version, which is not as much fun as knocking back a whole horde on the 360. It comes down to hardware, and they've done what they can, but given a choice, I'd probably play the 360 version. Matter of fact, given a choice, I'd play Left 4 Dead on the PC, but we're talking about the Wii here. Final thoughts, Badge? Yeah, I agree. Even though there's not too many zombie games on the Wii at the moment, I'd probably still give Dead Rising a miss. I'm giving it 5 out of 10 rubber chickens. What do you think about House of the Dead Overkill? Unfortunately, about halfway through Overkill, the Wii couldn't handle it, and there was quite a lot of slowdown. You can ask for extra mutants, you can buy extra guns as well, and there are mini-games for up to 4 people. Its best asset is its comedy, and if you're alone with 2 Wiimotes, you just can't resist the dual wield. I'm giving it 7.5 rubber chickens out of 10.
Good game.
So did you guess the game for this week? It was Zombie Revenge for the Sega Dreamcast, an undead punching beat-em-up that saw you giving the ungrateful dead a taste of the back of your hand. That's right, Badge, the controls were a bit stilted, but Zombie Revenge was still good, mindless fun. Next week, things return to normal around here. Codenamed Panzer Cold War is the latest game to offer alternate history. It's 1949 and the war between Russia and the US is anything but cold as Berlin becomes a savage battleground. Halo Wars and N-War prove that real-time strategy can work on a console. Stormrise aims to put paid to the argument forever with its innovative control scheme and vertical gameplay, and it's homegrown. Plus, we meet some Australians that take their gaming very seriously. Until next time, gamers, don't forget to check out the extra stuff on the site. I'm out of here.